Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Saturday. The weekend is here. I hope it's going well wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. No weekend of Arsenal football, of course, not for the men anyway. Big game for the women, of course, tomorrow in the Champions League. That second leg of the semi-final against Lyon. Can they turn it around? Fingers crossed they can get the job done. We'll talk about that in tomorrow's show. But it is quite kind of the calm before the storm. I was talking to someone yesterday, and I described this little period as that at the moment. It all just feels very quiet. Arsenal have had a couple of days off. They're going to come back. I think today will be their first day back at the training ground, and all the preparations will really start for Tuesday night. Huge game, of course, against PSG in the Champions League, the first leg of that semi-final. So it all just feels a little bit quiet at the moment. There's not too much going on, but that's a good thing. I think everyone needs to get ready, because this is going to be an emotionally, mentally, physically demanding week for us, first of all, let alone the players and the team. And I think we all just need a little bit of downtime to really get ready and prepare for what's to come this week, because it's a massive week. You can't big it up any more than it is. It's only the third time in Arsenal's history they've been in a semi-final of the Champions League. It's only the second time the Emirates has ever seen a semi-final of the Champions League. It is just a massive week kicking off this week. So we've had a little bit of a lull, but I think from today onwards, it's all going to start really going forward for Arsenal. It hasn't quite been a lull for PSG, though, of course, who Arsenal are playing on Tuesday night, because they were in action last night and it didn't go very well. This is a PSG team, obviously unbeaten in the league this season. We're going for an Invincibles type season, but that dream is now over, losing 3-1 last night at home to Nice in Ligue 1. So that unbeaten record has gone. And Luis Enrique played full strength side. I thought he would probably, I was talking to someone I know over in France who clued up on PSG, and he was expecting some changes last night. Thought he'd go pretty strong, but he would certainly change and rest a few ahead of the game against Arsenal. But he didn't. It was pretty much the team that everyone's now expecting will start against Arsenal that started yesterday's game. They missed loads and loads of chances. I think they had about 30 shots in the game. And they only scored one. Nice had 3 shots on target, and they scored all of them. They were clinical, and they won. Now, will this have a big impact on PSG ahead of Tuesday night's game? I don't know. You'd probably say not, but this isn't just a one-off thing. In their last 4 games now, PSG have only won 1. They've lost 2, including that defeat against Aston Villa. Obviously lost last night against Nice. They beat Le Havre 2-1, but they also drew 1-1 at the weekend away at Nantes. So they're not on a fantastic run of form. PSG, maybe that, you can put that down to the fact that the title's been wrapped up, and they've just been focusing purely on the Champions League, which is kind of what we've been saying about Arsenal, isn't it? It's like you kind of know that top 5 is pretty much secured, and so everyone's just focused on the Champions League now, because they know the title's gone. For PSG, they know they've safely got the title tucked away in their pocket, but this will be a disappointment for them. They did put out, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see picture of the ultras. They put out a banner. I can't remember exactly what it was like. Defeat the Arsenal, win us the Champions League. It was something like that. I'll see if I can find a quick the actual explanation of it. I can't find it now, unfortunately. Oh, here we go. It says, knock the Arsenal out, take us to the final. So that was the banner that they unrolled in, what's the word am I thinking of there? The banner they produced during the game. Unveiled, that was the word I was thinking of. Sorry, it's too early on a Saturday morning for me. I like the way they called us the Arsenal. Props to PSG for that. Not just Arsenal, but the Arsenal. So despite them saying they want to knock us out, I do like the sentiment of Le Arsenal rather than just Arsenal. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to have too much of an impact on Tuesday night, but it is still a bit of a shock to the system, I think, for PSG. And they're certainly looking a little bit fallible. When you look at this, 3 goals conceded last night at home to Nice. They conceded 3, of course, against Aston Villa. Could have been more than that in that game. They conceded against Le Havre and Nantes. It's been quite a long time. It's been 5 games since their last clean sheet. So there are areas where you can get at PSG, and I'm sure Arsenal and their coaching staff and all the analysts would have been watching this game last night and the recent games and taking a little bit of heart from it. Marquinhos isn't having the best of run of forms by all accounts. Again, speaking to someone who's been watching PSG quite a lot, is saying Marquinhos doesn't quite look at his best. So I think he might have got substituted yesterday as well, Marquinhos. So that might be an area to really try and exploit for Arsenal. So we'll see how it happens. But yeah, Arsenal quiet and calm the last couple of days. PSG not quite so much. But I think it's safe to say you're probably going to expect a slightly different PSG with a little bit more tempo and intensity when they rock up at the Emirates, and maybe the one that we saw last night. Sticking with the theme of the PSG game, as we spoke yesterday about the Ashburton Army and their attempts to sort of crowdfund for a Tifo. They raised about, I think, about £12,000 in about 24 hours for that, but then they couldn't agree with the club on the Tifo, so they had to refund everyone who has paid that money. We spoke about it yesterday, how, from my understanding, Arsenal didn't block the designs that we saw. It was just more of a case of we don't really have the logistics to get it done in time and to get it all signed off, which was a blow, certainly to Ashburton Army, who'd put raised a lot of money, and a lot of people had got involved and wanted to see the stadium looking in the best possible shape ahead of the semi-final on Tuesday night. But we now do know there are going to be 2 Tifos at the ground. That came out yesterday, and one of them is going to be a big sort of ceiling to floor, I think, Tifo, the first time the Emirates has ever seen that. So as much as it is disappointment, obviously we're not going to see what the Ashburton Army, what they were going to do, but there is going to be a couple of Tifos. One, I think there's going to be the sort of the flag rider one that we see, and then you're going to have the big one at the North Bank stretching from sort of roof to ground. Don't know the design on that yet. I think Red Action and some of the other fan groups were sort of pushing for a certain design, again similar to Ashburton Army, that wasn't able to be done in time. But it's going to be something that the club have done themselves. So we'll wait and see what it's like. But it's certainly, you'd hope the stadium's going to look pretty good and the atmosphere is going to look pretty good. I don't think we're going to see the red and white that we saw against Real Madrid when they handed out all the plastic bags. So I'm not sure we're going to see that again. But there's certainly going to be some sort of stuff to make the stadium and the welcome when the players do walk out on the pitch look as spectacular as it possibly can for this huge night. Can't believe we're only a few days away from it. And you've seen the weather next week? Absolutely glorious. Sunshine, blue skies. It's gonna be about mid-20 degrees. What a perfect day that is going to be. If you're working on Tuesday night, get the day off. Try and get the day off, half day. Get up to London early, enjoy it, soak up the atmosphere, and make it a really special night. I cannot wait for this one, everyone. It's going to be really, really special. Okay, just talking about Dean Huijsen, who we spoke about yesterday, and the Arsenal's reported interest in him. And I was sort of talking about, I like him. He looks a really good player. Does that need to be Arsenal's priority this summer? Again, I'm not against Arsenal signing him. If they're going to sign him, then fine. Hugely talented young player, would protect you if anything ever were to happen with Gabriel and Saliba down the line. Of course, can kind of play left side or right side. So we know how good he is and how talented. So I'm not going to be against it if Arsenal sign him. My only concern is if that sort of money for a player who I'm not sure is right at the top of the priority list would impact Arsenal getting a priority, if you see what I mean. But if it happens, then I'm perfectly fine with it, because he's a top quality player. So we'll see what does happen. But there's generated loads and loads of reaction from you guys. So I wanted to share some of it before moving onto this one. And I'll tell you what, overwhelmingly, I think the majority, certainly in the comments, who actually left a reply, are in favour of the Huijsen signing, and believe that it's just worth the sort of, I don't know if you want to call it gamble, but it's worth it, considering his talent, his age, and all that sort of stuff. So I'll go through some of what you guys have had to say here. Zach Kadra at the top says, we do need defenders. Tommy and Calafiori are injury prone, not reliable depth. Ben has struggled after injury. Kieran and Zinni will leave. We are one Saliba injury away from disaster. Moot says Huijsen can play left and right and would have been nice to have been able to rested Saliba a few times this season. Razak says, we need 2 sets of top quality defenders. Bring him in. I need a strong bench. Let's have 2 top teams. J2K says, Huijsen is worth the money. It's just whether or not there's room in the budget to improve the priority positions. It's kind of how I feel it. I'm sure there will be. Otherwise, they just wouldn't do it, I don't think. And X Stupefy Me says, I'd love to have Huijsen, but it's not going to affect. But as long as it's not going to affect the business elsewhere on the pitch. Nick says, Huijsen makes sense to me. We need to bump the size of the squad up. If we do well in all comps, that's 75-ish games. That's 30 players. We are probably losing Kivior and Tomiyasu. If I were Arteta, I would use a pre-season to get MLS to our number 6 next season. So we need players who can play centre-back and are skilled enough to be fullback. So I don't think MLS is going to be moved to 6 next season at all. Not when you sign in Zubimendi. I think MLS is definitely going to start next season as Arsenal's left back. Scott Keaton says, "Hey Charles, it could be with Tommy and Tierney, Jakob and Zinni all leaving in the summer. So it makes a bit of sense for me. We should get the 50 million back on sales as well." Oh, I'm not sure about that. We're going to get 50 million from those. I don't know if you mean other players, but the ones you mentioned, I don't think you're getting 50 million for them. And Esan says, hi, Charles. I agree with you in regards to other areas, centre forward, winger, CDM and goalkeeper being more of a priority. However, with the expectation that Zinchenko will leave along with Tierney this summer, for me, whether we need an additional defender will depend on the fitness of Tomiyasu, having barely featured over the last 2 seasons due to injury. Unless he shows during pre-season he's back to full fitness, I would sell or loan him out, which may leave us light with only 7 defenders for the season. Tomiyasu is not going to be fit for pre-season. I think Arsenal are looking at the end of the year for Tomiyasu to be fit. So I don't think it's a case of him going to be available, maybe being an option next season, or even being able to sell or loan him in the summer. He's not going to be around. It's a real serious injury that he's recovering from now. So I don't think Tomiyasu really comes into the equation at all when it comes to cover or moving him on in the summer. So that's what a lot of you, there was loads more as well. If you want to read through all the reaction to the Dean Huijsen links and go to yesterday's show and scroll down and look, there was so much reaction to it. And I have to say, again, like you've seen from the majority of the ones I've put on screen here, the majority were get it done or try and get it done. He's that good. Move in, get a really talented young defender on board. Elsewhere, not too much going on. As I said, really sort of quiet. Few stories doing the rounds linking Jules Koundé to Arsenal. Barcelona defender, been linked before he went to Barcelona with Arsenal in the past. Not sure on that one. I feel like someone like Huijsen is certainly much more of a Arsenal type signing right now than a Jules Koundé. I know Barcelona are probably going to need some money to sell to be able to buy this summer, but it's not one that I've certainly heard of myself, but we'll wait and see if anything comes from that. Elsewhere, Jorginho and his links with Flamengo continuing. There has been links with a possible move to Saudi for Jorginho now, and that's something that he could be exploring, but I still think that Flamengo is probably the most likely option, and providing he is fit and he's recovered from this rib injury that he's had that could well rule him out for the remainder of the season for Arsenal, Flamengo will push to get that deal done very, very quickly so he can be available for them at the Club World Cup this summer. But yeah, there are talks at the moment, or there are reports at the moment that maybe Saudi Arabia is becoming more of an option for Jorginho, but I still think Brazil is the most likely destination for him. A couple of comments now before we wrap this one up for today. Matt says, whoever we sign on a striker, I'm getting right behind. Even if I have my doubts, as I do with Gyökeres, it's got to be a success. You asked what's good for beating a low block. For me personally, it's basically 3 things. 1, the movement skills to find a yard of space in a crowded box and be in the right place at the right time. How many tap-ins do we miss now because there's no one there? Good point. 2, the technical skill to retain possession in tight spaces, provide the killer first touch to make a chance. 3, clinical finishing with head and both feet. I would rather go for Sesko myself. Whoever we sign, I'm backing the scouts to get it right. The only thing with Sesko is, and I really like Sesko, by the way, from what I've seen of him, but when you do talk to people who watch a lot of Sesko, far more than I do, is that he is very frustrating in front of goal. And which comes from being a 21-year-old striker. Of course, you're going to be, we're near your peak yet. You're gonna be frustrating. But when you talk about you've got to be clinical to take advantage of teams who play in the low block, I'm not sure Sesko, certainly from what I've heard from people I've spoken about who know a lot more about him than I do, he's not really that clinical. I think Gyökeres falls into the more clinical camp than Sesko does. When I was sort of thinking about how the best way to get around a low block, I mean, Man City were masters of it, weren't they? And they never had, in that time when City were masters of putting teams to the sword who just came back and sat deep at their place, they never really had that out-and-out striker in that sort of period between Aguero and Haaland. But they were just so good at moving the ball quickly, the speed of ball, and that's something that we know Arsenal aren't great at. That speed of ball and speed of first touch, sort of lay it off, rondos type stuff in and around the box to get to the byline and then cut it back, and there'd be an overload at the back post and Sterling or someone would tap it in. City was so good at that. And I don't think Arsenal were very good at that. They don't move the ball anywhere near as quickly as City did back then. And no matter how many players you got camped in your penalty area, if you move the ball quickly and you're just too good and too quick for them, you can always sort of find a way of getting around them. And City always did that. So I think that's probably the best way of getting around a low block. And I'm not sure a striker fixes that for Arsenal. I think another real creator, another number 8, a number 10 type player to play alongside Odegaard, to be on the edge of the box, who's got that real sort of quick speed of thought in the mind, that sort of a different left 8 profile to the one that we currently see playing for Arsenal, which is a more physical sort of dominating player in the Declan Rice and a Havertz or a Marino. Maybe that's a way to go, but I don't think it's the way that Arteta's going to go. I have to say. So thanks for that, Matt, for getting in touch. And finally, one from Sam, who talks about Naipan, who's obviously looks like he's going to Aston Villa rather than Arsenal. Sphere Naipan, the Norwegian teenager who Arsenal have been trying to sign. Says, I was pretty disappointed hearing the news that the Villa are closing on Naipan, although admittedly I'm not an expert at the player. I believe that kind of profile is something we really need when we come up against these low blocks, which we've suffered against many times. We need more creativity from central areas, rely too heavily on Odegaard for this creation chance. Hence why I think he's getting much criticism recently, and I believe that Nwaneri is the kind of player who will consistently craft out chances for others. Sorry, I don't believe Nwaneri is the kind of player that will consistently craft out chances for others. I thought Naipan would be a perfect option, as he's not going to break the bank. He's young and he's very talented. Do you think we push harder to go for Naipan? No, I don't. I think if he's going to go to Villa, he's going to go to Villa. I don't think Arsenal will push any harder now. Go to a different option or work with what we've got potentially internally. Vieira. Again, this sort of goes back to what I was just talking about and how you beat the low block and this type of player in and around the edge of the penalty area that maybe Naipan was, who was going to be that different left-sided option. I think a lot revolves around who they go for when it comes to the left winger. Is it going to be an out-and-out left winger along the lines of Nico Williams, or is it going to be a sort of left winger who can play in that central area as well, along the lines of a Eze or a Xavi Simons or someone like that? So I think it all gets kind of going to depend on who's available, who they think they get, who they can't get, maybe more importantly. Thinking of Nico Williams there if he decides to say no. So I don't think they're going to, because they've lost out on Naipan, I think they look to him more as a market opportunity of really talented young teenager. We want to sign more of these players. He's available. Let's try and get him. Because they haven't, I don't think they're necessarily going to go, right, we have to sign another player, plays in the exact sort of position as him. I think it'll be a case of how the market sort of goes and who's available or not when it comes to fixing that sort of left hand, or not fixing, but adding to that left-hand side of the attack. And that's it from me today, everyone. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. As always, thanks for listening as well. If you want to listen on audio rather than watching in the future, remember the links are down below in the description for all the podcast channels that this show gets downloaded to every single day, so you can listen on the go as well. Speak to you soon, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.